with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, December the 14th. Big news in Arkansas today, I guess, is a lot of noise at the state capitol. More than 36 people signed up to be heard at a public hearing at the Capitol on placement of a Ten Commandments monument on the Capitol grounds. This was required in a state law sponsored by State Senator Jason Rayford. Much of the discussion today was about religious topics and the religious nature of this monument. Of course, legislators insist it's not really about religion, but the foundation of law. They need to say this to try and get around a clear line of court cases that says you just can't establish religion on the public grounds of the state capitol. Not if you turn down other people's requests for other monuments that honor other brands of faith and in law and other sorts of things. Well, Rayford said today, from his point of view, the matter was settled. It's law. Well, of course, Arkansas has passed many laws that another branch of government the courts have found unconstitutional. I expect eventually we're heading to court on this issue. I doubt Secretary of State Mark Martin, who's an evangelical himself, is going to stand in the way of placement of this monument on the Capitol grounds, given that the legislature has approved it. Elsewhere, a new report on death rates in the United States show clustering of death from certain types of diseases in certain places. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, for example, lead in diabetes deaths, not surprising in states that lead in obesity rates as well. Arkansas also is a leader in cardiovascular disease deaths. Other states suffer from other problems. West Virginia and Kentucky, for example, cancer and extraordinarily high rates of drug overdose deaths. The bottom line here, I think, is that demography is destiny, that zip code can be a death sentence. Poor parts of the United States have higher death rates, shorter life expectancy. That's always been the case, and we're not making much progress in the country as a whole. Voter ID, it's going to be back at the Arkansas legislature this year. Mark Lowry of Maumelle has proposed a bill to again require photo ID at polling places. This is a national Republican strategy to depress voting among poor and minority voters. It's been very successful in other states. The law was struck down by the Supreme Court in Arkansas previously. They're going to try essentially the same law again. They think they have a legal angle to win this time. However, the majority opinion the last time around said very clearly that this was a facial, unconstitutional, new requirement on voting, which the Constitution seems to prohibit. They perhaps hoping for a friendlier Supreme Court. The personnel there has changed, and the court now seems much more likely to endorse what the legislature wants than they perhaps sometimes were in the past. Governor Asa Hutchinson's tax cut proposal, a remarkable proposal to give a $50 million income tax cut entirely to poor working people in Arkansas, has drawn some pushback. The Koch Foundation funded Americans for Prosperity said they'd much rather see some tax benefits that also went to the higher end of the economic spectrum. Of course they would. The billionaire Kochs would benefit enormously from that. Representative Warwick Saban, a Democrat, still thinks it'd be better to have an earned income tax credit to help poor people. That's a better economic stimulus, but that idea is not likely to go far in a Republican-dominated legislature. I mentioned the other day some good news of the legislature, an effort by Republican Representative Carolyn Brown of Sherwood to increase the state's poor vaccination rate among school children with expanding mandatory vaccination requirements. She's already said she'll pull the bill down, got a heated outcry from the anti-vaccination crowd, which is small but awfully persuasive. She didn't want to fight that fight. UA Chancellor Joseph Steinmetz was in Little Rock yesterday, gave a speech to the Rotary Club. He repeated his 8-point priority list for the University of Arkansas campus, which he'd unveiled earlier for the university staff. It doesn't include a football stadium expansion. He was asked about that by a Rotarian in the audience, and he said football stadiums just weren't on his priority list. Not that he's against it, of course. Steinmetz did repeat that he hopes to see the athletic department, which makes more than $100 million a year in various revenue, contribute more to the general university academic effort. But so far the budget this year shows it contributing at the same level it has in years past. Here's an interesting thing from the Federal Transportation Department. Whether it will remain so progressive in the future remains to be seen. They've put together what they call a transportation toolkit. It's to help common citizens deal in the very complex process of opposing superhighway construction projects. This, of course, relates very directly to Little Rock, where some people here are fighting an effort to widen the freeway through downtown Little Rock. The interesting thing here is the Federal Highway Department, which provides a lot of money to the states, recognizes now that superhighways through cities sometimes have been very damaging to those cities. In Arkansas, we still believe that if there's one thing better than a superhighway through the heart of the city, it's an even wider superhighway through the heart of the city. Happily, people in Little Rock are working against that prospect. They now have some help they can see from the Transportation Department. See the Arkansas blog for how to get in touch with that. Interesting story developing in Washington. There's always something to say about Donald Trump in there. It's now being reported widely that the contract by which Donald Trump leases a federal building for a luxury hotel in Washington, D.C., a former post office building, says quite clearly that the lease may not be entered into or benefit somebody who's elected to U.S. office. That would seem to suggest Trump needs to divest himself of this hotel before Inauguration Day or face some kind of untold consequences for being clear violation of a federal contract. Does the law apply to Donald Trump? He hasn't yet said what he plans to do about his multiple conflicts of interest in his private business and how it affects his conduct of the offices of the presidency, but he needs to do something. It's already presented a conflict of interest. People aiming to get favors from the Trump administration are already filling the hotel up as paying guests from foreign governments and elsewhere. We've never seen anything quite like it, but I guess we've never seen anything quite like Donald Trump. I'm Max Brantley. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow.